So, some of you guys scoot over here. This is weird. So, I had a great question earlier today in class, and it was kind of connected to something that happened to one of our students lately. Some of you guys heard me talk about this, but this will be news to a lot of you. One of our students almost got kidnapped the other day. She was in an Uber, and the driver, she was actually on her way to the dojo, and the driver just went past the dojo and was trying to go take her onto the 405 South. And she kept telling him no, let me out, this isn't it, I want to get out, and he just kept going. And she had the wherewithal and the awareness to recognize something bad was happening, and so right at the stoplight before they were about to get on the freeway, she slid over, unlocked the door, and jumped out of the car. And this student is a pretty good martial artist for the amount of time she's been here, especially. I think that she could have done a lot of damage. The person did not pick on the right person. And still, it's great that it didn't come to her having to physically defend herself by striking or maiming this other person. She just got out while the getting was good. And so this kind of brought up the idea of, why we're practicing and what we should be getting out of practice. I was talking about this in Tai Chi, and it certainly holds true in the adult martial arts class in Kung Fu. But if you are practicing the right way, you should really be strengthening your intuition, and you should really be more aware of things like that, of the subtle things that are going around you. And then Leah asked this question today. Well, what's the difference between intuition and going overboard into second guessing? And when I think about this, I think of this line where on one side it's I'm aware of things that are happening, and I can recognize if I'm listening to my intuition that something is wrong, or it might not be something's wrong, it might be intuition says something is right, I don't know, but it's intuition, and it's feeling that you get. And then over here is I'm kind of making stuff up in my head, and I'm second guessing myself, and I'm kind of living up here in my thoughts, and it's very different from intuition. And it might sometimes seem very similar, and it might even seem like an extension of intuition, but I'm going to suggest tonight that it's different, it's separate really. If you look at intuition, in my experience, and I was joking with Miss Macy earlier today, but I'm a man, I don't really have intuition. I just look at stuff and I just deal with it. But I think that intuition is definitely real, and I certainly have it, and I think some other people have it more than I do. But in my experience, intuition is something that starts with a feeling, and it's you hear people say all the time, I had a gut feeling, I just felt it in my gut, and there's actually most often a physical sensation. Something doesn't feel right, or something feels weird, or it's you're excited and you have butterflies in your stomach, or you feel kind of a tingling sensation, or you feel your gut drops and it's something really is wrong or bad. And that's the beginning of intuition, is that sensation. It is oftentimes a visceral experience. And so when this student was in this car that kept driving past the dojo, and she was telling him many times to stop, pull over, I want out of the car, and he didn't listen to her. And she knew that he spoke English because he was talking to her earlier on in the drive. Then at that point, it just got, it even went beyond intuition. intuition started and she started feeling this way and she started saying things like, let me out of the car, this isn't right. Then it got past that and she just had to jump out. That started with a feeling. The other way would be like second guessing or kind of getting up in your head doesn't start with a feeling. That often starts with a thought. So I, read something, an article about how unsafe Uber is. And I'm sorry, anybody here who loves Uber or is an Uber driver or, owns stock in Uber or whatever, but I'll just say this. There have been complaints about Uber and like people getting kidnapped and all kinds of terrible stuff happening. And so maybe you read an article about that and then you get in your Uber and then you start thinking, oh my God, am I going to die right now? I'm in an Uber. I just remembered. I remembered too late. I already got in the car and then I remembered this article that I read. And so then that thought starts to turn into something, some kind of a fantasy in your head, and you start to think about, this person isn't making eye contact with me. I wonder if they're going to try to kill me. And like all the places that we take this story in our head. And then that will turn into a feeling. You'll definitely talk yourself right into being freaked out. You'll start to have a feeling. Your gut will feel like there's something wrong. But the difference really is where it starts. And you might get to a very similar or almost identical experience, but where it starts is where it's different. It starts with a feeling versus starts with a thought. And listening to your intuition is separate from listening to the thoughts in your head. And we are great at listening to the thoughts in our head. We love listening to the thoughts in our head. We're perfect at it. That's what you do when you meditate. I mean, it's not what you're supposed to do when you meditate, but it's what you do. You sit there and you have thoughts and you just go, oh, that's right. What about this stupid thing that I did earlier today? I really messed that up. I should have done this. And like you're in there telling yourself this whole story of all of the sequence that happened. And then sometimes you really go and you're like, I remember this thing that happened when I was 12 years old. I was really an idiot back then. And you're like embarrassed and you're sitting there meditating and you're having this feeling like of embarrassment. Sometimes when I meditate, I actually meditate. And then other times when I meditate, I will do kind of like what Devere was talking about at the end of last class. Like I think about what would happen if I was getting attacked. And I do this and that, and I try not to let that happen in meditation, and I usually am good at letting it go, but if I'm not, I'll find myself in a fight, and my body is all like starting to tense up, and I'm getting adrenalized while I'm sitting there meditating. And I'm much better now at just letting that go earlier on, but this is probably an experience that you guys have had, something like that. Maybe you're not thinking about fantasizing about being in a fight, but something that really takes you off on a tangent. So in meditation, one of the things that we're practicing is just letting those trains of thought go early on. And your meditation should instead make you better at recognizing intuition, being aware of what's really going on. And if you are able to clear your mind, then you don't have those thoughts and you're not just playing a tape over and over again. Instead, you're actually connected to the moment, connected to reality. And if you think about our practice, even on a physical level, this is what we're practicing. So you might, go to spar with somebody. Let's say Robin's my partner. And let's say that she's standing over here. Can you see us okay? So let's say that we're here and I think, oh, Robin loves throwing a front punch. She's definitely going to hit me with a front punch. Well, maybe she throws a front punch and I get out of the way. Or maybe she throws an uppercut like she loves throwing and I got hit by it because I was thinking front punch, right? Well, if I happened to get it right and she threw the front punch, that was not intuition. That was me guessing and getting it right, which doesn't happen very often. But if I watch my partner's center and I clear my mind and I see her move her body and then she throws a technique, yeah, I can see it coming, I can get out of the way. Because I saw it, right? And I've had the experience in sparring, and some of you guys who've been sparring for a while may have had this experience a couple of times. where you could see just from like not even your partner's beginning of the technique, but kind of like just a little adjustment that they made in the way that they were standing, and you can tell what they're about to throw. And that's intuition. It did not come from me thinking this person loves to throw this, or thinking, you know what she hasn't thrown in a while is that haito. I bet she's about to throw the haito. It just came from watching and being totally connected to my partner. So that is distinct and separate from thinking your way through. You cannot think your way through martial arts. It's impossible. If you try to think your way through sparring, you will get hit many times, and you will miss your partner many times because your thoughts are in the way. They're slowing you down. So even on a physical level, we're practicing really being completely connected to the moment, that awareness that allows us to connect to our intuition and to recognize what's happening in reality rather than the stories that we tell. So human beings love stories, and we're super practiced at this. We tell stories all the time, and it doesn't even have to be about something all that dramatic. It's like somebody, I was in the grocery store, and the person who was ringing me up at the cash register gave me a funny look, and I thought, why is this person looking at me funny? Did I say something weird the last time that I was here? Do I have something in my nose? Is something going on here? And then I'm thinking about, oh man, I remember the last time I was here, I think I did say something weird to this person, and they looked at me funny then, and what if this person's going to follow me out into the parking lot and try to kill me? Or like whatever story you tell about it, all of that is not real, right? What's real is they looked at you, and it might not even be that they looked at you funny. Like even the funny part could just be your interpretation of it. Versus that person looked at me. Okay. And then if you come at it from a clear state of mind, from something close to Mushin, you get to actually choose what the story is. And unfortunately, you're not really going to escape the story. You're constantly going to be telling yourself a story. What you do get to do is decide what the story is. And the way that you get to decide what the story is by getting yourself in a clear state of mind, in like a meditative state of mind, something close to Mushin. So I purposefully have very empowering stories that I tell myself about my life. And not everybody has that, because first, a lot of people aren't aware of this whole story thing, and second, people just don't have the wherewithal to decide in the moment what story you're going to tell. So if you can take an experience like that, and it's just like watching your partner center and being completely connected to reality and recognize, all right, they're moving this way, and then I can see what technique comes from that. That's like I looked at somebody and they looked at me in this way, and then I get to decide what it is. Now, you can also take that into the physical sensation that you have in your body. So it might be that I'm getting a physical sensation, and this is like a feeling that I'm having, and it's something that is, connected to intuition. It could also just be a feeling that you have. And so maybe I'm talking with somebody and they're saying something, and I start getting this knot in my stomach. And the knot in my stomach, I could interpret to be, this person's really pissing me off right now. Or the knot in the stomach could be, I'm interpreting it as, I'm starting to realize how much I really care about this person. Or the knot in the stomach could be, man, I haven't eaten in 10 hours. I should really eat something. But it's a physical sensation that then we take and turn into whatever it is that we want to turn into. And that's the key, is you should be able to turn it into something that empowers you, and you should be able to tell a story that is helpful for you. And most of the stories we tell are just not helpful. Most of the stories, for me, I had this story that I loved to tell myself about my childhood, and it was that I was the one kid who got made fun of all the time in middle school. and like I was bullied, and it was like nobody even threw a punch at me. They just like made fun of me. But I made it like I took it so personally, and really for years I thought that there was something wrong with me. Like I had done something wrong to deserve getting made fun of, and also there was this whole like, why me? Life is so unfair, and like I would get depressed about it, and it was like really unhelpful. And now when I look back at it, I mean, part of it is just, being older and having a little bit of hindsight or perspective. But part of it is also just the ability to recognize when I'm starting to tell a story about something. And I can look back on it and see like, well, sometimes I just said something, like here's a perfect example. I was in the second grade talent show, and there are actually several instances within this story that were. So first, the most popular girl in school, Katie, I forget her Katie Travis. Katie Travis, if you're listening, Katie, I had a huge crush on you. She came up to me one day and she asked me to be in the talent show. And I was gonna be like the star of this like group of kids act in the talent show. And we were doing Hammer Time. I was MC Hammer. And when she asked me, at first I was like, yes, I will be MC Hammer. And then, as soon as I got home, I was like, wait a minute. She's totally asking me this because she's trying to make fun of me, and like, there's going to be something happening here where everyone's going to end up laughing at me, and she's just doing this because, or like maybe my mom talked to her mom and they like got together and decided we'll ask Ryan because he just doesn't have anything going on in his life. I was 8 years old. So I had all of these stories going on. And it's also possible that like she just didn't hate me as much as I thought everybody hated me back then, and she just asked me. And so we're like rehearsing, and I'm getting the hammer dance down, and I got everything. We go up on stage, and there was this Pepsi commercial on at the time, and some of you guys might remember this. I don't, because I never saw the Pepsi commercial, I guess. But somebody like tosses MC Hammer a can of Pepsi, or he gets it and he drinks it and he goes, proper. I hadn't seen it, but I was going to do my best MC Hammer impression. Somebody gave me a can of Pepsi, I popped it, I took a sip, and I thought they were going to hand me a fake microphone, but they handed me a real microphone. I'm in front of the entire school, hundreds of kids, everybody who has, in my mind, been making fun of me and hating for years, and I'm like, this is my shot. Everyone's going to love me because I'm going to be the sweetest MC Hammer ever. I'm wearing parachute pants, and I got a whole crew of backup dancers, and they hand me a real mic, and I freeze. I'm like, they're about to hear this, and this is bad. So I go into the microphone and I go, proper. And the whole school erupts in laughter. And in that moment, I think, obviously, because I was a fragile young human being, they're laughing at me because I said proper the wrong way. I never even saw the commercial. Why didn't they show me the commercial before I did this? What's wrong with these people? And yet I went and I did the whole thing, and I'm like dancing around, and like we finished and we get second place, and it was great. But for years I was convinced that the entire school was laughing at me. And now if I look back on it, I realize it's possible that they just laughed because I said proper, and it's like they got the joke. And I was 8, and so they didn't expect me to sound like MC Hammer or whatever. But that was a story that I literally took with me for, 20 years, I would say. And so we all probably have something similar to that, maybe not as dramatic and in front of so many people and like life-altering, but it's a story, right? And at the end of the day, it's a story that I told myself, and now I can look back at it and decide, not because I'm like just trying to think positively, but like just from a place of reality, maybe they were just laughing because it was funny and like it was cool. That's it. So that is what you get to do if you get to a place with this story where you can recognize, am I just going off and replaying this thing in my head that I've been replaying for years? And your minds get used to the same types of patterns, and they even get used to telling the same types of stories. It's really easy to tell yourself a story that you've been repeating over and over and get yourself into that same powerless state of mind. And so it takes something. It really takes an awareness and a mindfulness and a recognition in that moment of when the story is starting. And it's the same thing that is going to help you connect to intuition, connect to reality, and recognize if I'm like way over here telling myself a story that's not helpful at all. So I want you to refrain from sitting there and meditating tonight and thinking about all of the terrible things that happened to you in middle school. And instead, you're just going to sit and breathe. And every time you start to think, and it has this tendency to go off on a tangent, you're going to start telling yourself a story. Just bring it right back to the breath. And the way to do that is just to let it go. And you might actually get so far off that you start to have that physical sensation in your body from whatever it is that you're replaying in your head or whatever it is you're thinking about that you got to deal with when you're done with class. All that is good. Let it go and just come right back to this breath. In this breath, there's nothing else happening. There's no story. There's no physical sensation other than the sensation of the breath that you need to be aware of. Sit.